Hey, welcome back to another episode on Genealogy TV. If this is your first time here, my name is Connie Knox. I am a lifelong genealogist here to help you go further, faster, and factually with your family research. Now, today we are going to be talking about Find a Grave, and I've got 5 tips for you. So stick around for that. We're going to talk about how best to use Find a Grave with my little tips. So enjoy that. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back. Let me give you some quick background on Find a Grave. This website was originally created by a guy named Jim Tipton, and his hobby was looking for celebrity graves, and there was no website available for this kind of thing, so he created one. Genealogists kind of started noticing it and finding it cool, and before you know it, Ancestry buys it in 2013 and makes it part of their products. So Find a Grave is free to use, and in even signing up with a profile on Find a Grave, I'm going to tell you why that's a smart move to do as a genealogist. As I said, the website's free to use. The only downside to that is you have to put up with some ads, but that's how they support the website. So here is tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to search, not necessarily by name. You can certainly do that right here. You can go in and type information in here, and you could search by name, but I suggest that my tip is to search by cemetery. One of my favorite things to do when I'm doing anything in the world of genealogy is to right click and open in a new tab. That way you don't lose where you were. And so if you go to searching by cemetery, I'm going to show you why this is an advantage. So I'm going to search for my great-grandfather in Olathe Cemetery, Johnson County, Kansas. All right, so we're going to search the cemetery, and so here's the cemetery. Now, this is assuming you know what the cemetery is, or at least the location. You could actually search by location and find all the cemeteries in that area. But if you know where the person's buried, then searching by cemetery can be a big advantage, and here's why. Because here's the cemetery. So I'm going to click through to the cemetery, and then instead of typing Henry Henley, I'm going to type just Henley. All right? And what that does is it gives me everybody with that last name that is buried in that cemetery. Why is that important? Because they're probably all related. Tip number 2 is become a contributor. There's a lot of different ways you can contribute, but by contributing information, you are kind of leaving a breadcrumb trail behind. If you become a contributor of information, you could come in here and suggest information and add stuff to this memorial, or you could add a new memorial. But what you need to do is first you have to actually have an account, and if you don't have one, you can create one right from the very home page there. So as a contributor, you can contribute information, but you can also contribute photographs. And so I'm going to jump down here to my grandfather here. Now here's a situation where I contributed a photograph. Now good genealogical ethics says that you would ask permission to use this photograph before using it in a publication or anywhere, quite frankly. But the cool part is on Find a Grave is you can see it says added by Constance Knox. That's me, right? But if it were somebody else, say it was John Doe, you could drill in to that person's profile and email them and ask them for permission to use that photograph. Now, a lot of times you'll find in the bio of that person that they says, you may use my photographs. In other words, you don't need to contact me. You can use any of my photographs anytime. So when you are getting ready to download one of those photographs that that you want to use, you know, you can certainly do that and save as this image, but, you know, in all fairness, you should be asking permission before you actually use that, especially when posting online anywhere. But you certainly can contact the contributor and make sure you check the bio, because the bio probably already gives you permission. A lot of the photographers, in fact, I think somewhere on the website it suggests that you automatically put that in your bio so that people don't contact you. Now, in some cases, photographers will turn off the ability to be contacted, and so sometimes you can't reach out. But in my case, I just go ahead and give everybody permission to use my images and be done with it. So that is tip number 2, is to become a contributor. But when we start talking about being a contributor, not only can you bring information to the table for others to use, but you can add memorials, you can upload photographs of gravestones that you have taken, but you can also request photographs for areas that you're not in, you know, you can't travel to. So you could actually request a photograph of an ancestor if you can't find it on Find a Grave. So when you're in the profile area, one of the great bonuses is a lot of times there are other family members listed here, and a lot of times these other family members are also linked. Every time you see one of these that has an underline on it, it is actually on Find a Grave, and you can actually see the little photographs here. And you can click through and take a look at the profile of the person who is related to your ancestor. So that's really helpful and very cool. And here is tip number 3. Tip number 3 is leave flowers. So here is where you can leave flowers. And one of the reasons why I suggest you leave flowers is because, as you can see, I have not left any flowers here. Well, I want to leave flowers because what it does is it says, I was here. So now I've left a flower there. And if I come back 5 years later or 2 years later, I can see that I have been here. And I have looked at this information, and a lot of times you will find additional information about your ancestors. And one of the things you want to take note of as you're collecting information for your family history is take note of the memorial ID on Find a Grave, and put that in your source citations. Super important. Okay, tip number 4 is to become a volunteer photographer. And you can do that by adding memorials and adding the cemeteries in your area. Go out and photograph areas that are unphotographed. Or you can sign up to be a volunteer photographer, and people will send you requests. As they're researching their ancestors in your area where you live, you may get a request to go out and photograph in an area that they can't get to. And so you're actually, doing a great service to those other people by going out and photographing those cemeteries. Tip number 5 is to use the app. And I'm pulling up my cell phone here. And so the app on your cell phone has really great advantages. So you can do the same kind of searching by searching by person or searching by cemetery. So if you're taking a genealogy road trip and you are out and about and you want to take a cemetery and plug it into the app and then and search your area for that, you can find the cemetery in your area. Now, with that information on your cell phone, you can actually contribute photographs right from your cell phone, take pictures of the tombstone, type up the information that you see on the tombstone right there in your cell phone, and then contribute it right off of your cell phone. which is really cool. But if you're out researching and you are maybe going to the local library in an area that is in an area that you're researching, you go, hey, well, as long as I'm in town, let me go see if, he's buried in a local cemetery, and you go pull up the app, then you can actually search on the Find a Grave app, which is really cool. You should also know there is another service called Billion Graves. Check that out as well. My bonus tip to you is to create virtual cemeteries. So if you have, in my case, my maiden name is Henley. So if I have a whole family of Henleys, I can create a virtual cemetery of Henleys. Now I've got a couple in here already, but if I want to create a new one, and this is my own little cemetery, right? This is my own little collection of all the graves around where I've found people. So I could just say, here's my Henley virtual cemetery, and I'm going to save that to my little virtual cemetery. And then as I go and find more and more Henleys, doesn't matter what cemetery they're in, I can keep adding them to my virtual cemetery and find them easier. So that is my little bonus tip for you about Find a Grave. I hope that was helpful. If you like that, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell if you've not subscribed before. And I'm going to leave some more information up here on the screen for you right now about some of the other cemetery related videos that I have done, because boy, these are great resources. And sometimes it's in our death records and in our cemetery records and our burial records that provide more information than you may find anywhere else about your ancestors. So, okay, until next time, keep on climbing your family tree.